When you think of the Mafia, you probably picture the Italian mobsters of New York or Chicago. But hidden beneath the radar, in dusty backroads and smoke-filled bars of the Deep South, there was another syndicate, deadly disorganized and deeply corrupt. What was the Dixie Mafia? How did it begin? Who was involved? Where are they now? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. The Dixie Mafia wasn't born in a grand hotel or smoky social club. It was forged in truck stops, roadhouses, gambling halls, and juke joints all across the southern United States during the 1950s and 60s. There was no official Don or organizational chart, no hierarchy of mob bosses or crime families who could be investigated, no family members to be arrested, charged, and then flipped to turn into state or government witnesses, allowing for major takedowns. This was a loose network of criminals connected by greed, corruption, and a willingness to kill. Their golden rule? Thou shalt not snitch to the law. If you did, the results would be terminal. The Dixie Mafia specialized in everything from gambling, drug trafficking, arson, car theft, moonshine, murder for hire, protection rackets, and they had friends in high places. The Mafia owned cops, sheriffs, judges, mayors, and possibly even governors. In fact, it has been alleged, with some credence, that Lyndon Baines Johnson was an early founder of the Dixie Mafia, and see our video on him for some interesting facts. They operated without fear of retribution in small towns across Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, with places like Biloxi and Phoenix City, also known as Sin City, becoming infamous strongholds. In the 1950s, Phoenix City was so lawless, the National Guard had to step in just to restore order. And in Biloxi, Mississippi, rigged elections, fake court cases, and fixed investigations became routine, fueled by bribes and backed by bloodshed. Unlike the Italian Mafia, the Dixie Mafia didn't care about your background. You didn't have to be Sicilian, you just had to be ruthless. Though specific names rotated, the entire city government of Phoenix City, Alabama in the 1940s to 50s was considered deeply embedded with Dixie Mafia-affiliated rackets. Those who opposed the Mafia often wound up dead, such as Albert Patterson, an anti-corruption candidate for Alabama Attorney General who was assassinated in 1954 for attempting to clean up the city. One of the most notorious figures in Dixie Mafia history is Kirksey McCord Nix, Jr. Convicted in 1971 for a mob-style hit in New Orleans, Nix was sent to Louisiana's Angola prison for life, but that did not stop him. From behind bars, Nix ran a fraud and extortion ring, conning wealthy individuals and organizing murders. He was linked to the 1987 murders of Judge Vincent Sherry and his wife Margaret, a hit ordered from prison, a crime that shocked Biloxi and blew the lid off the Dixie Mafia's operations. The hit was ordered as part of a money laundering and fraud cover-up involving the Lonely Hearts scam run from prison. The concern Nix had was that the judge, who was supposedly on the take, had been exposed and was going to turn witness against Nix in a new trial. The connections to law enforcement and politicians were what launched the FBI investigation called Operation Lost Trust. The case revealed deep corruption inside Biloxi city government and the Harrison County Sheriff's Office, and one example was Mayor Pete Halat, the mayor of Biloxi. He was the Biloxi city attorney in the 1980s who was later elected mayor, serving from 1989 to 1993. He was accused of channeling legal trust funds from the Sherrys to Kirksey Nix's crime syndicate and convicted in 1997 of racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy related to the Sherry murders and Nix's fraud ring, and sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Also targeted was Sheriff Leroy Hobbs of Harrison County, Mississippi, who was accused in the media and federal investigations of turning a blind eye to Dixie Mafia operations in Biloxi and Gulf Coast casinos during the 1970s and 1980s. While he was never convicted, many law enforcement insiders believed he was complicit and was paid off to protect criminal activity linked to Nix's crew, as well as transporting of illegal substances and protecting the drug trade. State Representative Buster Guzzardo of Louisiana was indicted in 1995 on charges including bribery, extortion, and racketeering related to illegal video poker operations and of using his office to protect organized gambling linked to Dixie Mafia-connected figures. Many other local sheriffs in Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana were found guilty or removed from office after being exposed for bribes, protection rackets, or gambling ties. Many others feeling the heat simply retired from public office. Some Dixie Mafia operations were linked to Southern governors' campaigns using indirect donations or corrupt business partners, though rarely provable in court. Alabama Governor George Wallace, the segregationist who had deep KKK ties and a large war chest supposedly built upon Dixie Mafia money, was under investigation, but he felt confident enough to run for the presidency in 1967. In many southern counties, the Dixie Mafia didn't operate in the shadows, they ran the town. Corrupt sheriffs provided protection in exchange for kickbacks. Judges threw out cases. In some areas, the Mafia ran illegal casinos and protection rackets right under the noses of voters, and prostitution was rampant. One of the greatest money-making endeavors was moonshine. The making of illegal whiskey had always been a major source of income and part of our history. In fact, it was a lifestyle that created the motorsport of NASCAR. Moonshiners would make their booze and then use supercharged hot rods that could outrun the local police to move their product through counties and across state lines. In many cases, local law enforcement was involved and bribed to look the other way. Sometimes they assisted in the transportation themselves. The Dixie Mafia has been linked to the drug cartels, especially in the 1980s and 90s, and especially linked to Pablo Escobar's Medellín Cartel, flying their drugs into the U.S. by pilots such as Barry Seal, who also worked for CIA, complicated the issue when it came to federal and local law enforcement activities and investigations. See our videos on the drug lords also. By the 1980s, remnants of the Dixie Mafia, especially in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, began working logistics and protection for Colombian cocaine routes entering the U.S. These included airstrips, trucking routes, and laundering businesses in the South, often operated by or in cooperation with former moonshiners, smugglers, and corrupt sheriffs affiliated with Dixie Mafia figures. This made the Dixie Mafia a regional facilitator in global cartels like Escobar's Medellín Cartel, especially in areas with light federal oversight. However, rather than disappearing, the Dixie Mafia simply rebranded, reinvented themselves, with many of its members and tactics absorbed into Mexican cartels, biker gangs, and white-collar crime rings across the region. Mena Intermountain Municipal Airport in western Arkansas became infamous in the 1980s as a suspected hub for CIA-backed smuggling operations. Drug pilot Barry Seal, a former Medellín Cartel operative turned DEA informant, ran drug and arms trafficking flights through Mena. One of these American cartels had connections to Roger Clinton, the brother of Arkansas Attorney General William Jefferson Clinton, who later became governor and then president of the United States, and see our video on Bill Clinton. Roger Clinton, the half-brother of President Bill Clinton, earned the nickname Headache from Secret Service agents due to his legal troubles and associations. In the 1980s, Roger was convicted of cocaine distribution and served a year in federal prison. Roger was recorded in FBI wiretaps claiming that, "My brother has a nose like a vacuum cleaner for cocaine," although there's no direct legal evidence that Bill Clinton ever used or trafficked drugs. Seal himself had ties to Pablo Escobar, smuggling cocaine into the U.S. in enormous quantities. The Dixie Mafia, which had been running heroin, marijuana, and cocaine throughout the country, began manufacturing and selling methamphetamine, which was locally made and easier to distribute. There were persistent allegations that state and local officials, including Governor Bill Clinton's administration, looked the other way or were complicit in exchange or for financial or political kickbacks. Bill Clinton, of course, denied any involvement, and official investigations by the Arkansas State Police, DEA, and congressional committees produced no formal charges against him. And see our video on Bill Clinton. However, whistleblowers like Terry Reid, the author of Compromised, and former IRS investigator Bill Duncan claimed obstruction and cover-ups were widespread, with links to both drug cartels and Dixie Mafia-type operatives running logistics and laundering money. Some sources, such as journalist Ambrose Evans Pritchard and former Arkansas troopers, alleged Rogers' drug connections extended to regional smuggling operations with Dixie Mafia overlaps, including distribution networks active in Hot Springs, Arkansas, a known historical base for organized crime and illicit activity. Investigators like Gary Webb of the Dark Alliance and former DEA agents noted that Southern organized crime served as a bridge between cartel shipments and domestic distribution, often under protection of local political machines and the authorities. By the 1990s, the Dixie Mafia was fractured and fading. Federal agents used RICO laws to break up major cells. Many leaders were jailed or killed, and younger generations of criminals turned to new alliances. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the Dixie Mafia was in decline. Federal crackdowns, RICO charges, and aging members took their toll, but remnants still exist, especially in drug trafficking, cyber scams, and local corruption cases. However, the Dixie Mafia may have dropped off the radar, but that doesn't mean they're done. Some say remnants of the Dixie Mafia survive in modern-day biker gangs, rural drug operations, and white-collar corruption rings throughout the South. Their methods of using violence, their demand of intense loyalty, murder, extortion, blackmail, and silence among their members were non-negotiable and still echo in today's crime scenes. They weren't the Hollywood Mafia. They wore no tuxedos, there was no cannoli, no blood oath, and no code of honor. But make no mistake, the Dixie Mafia was every bit as deadly. A true Southern crime syndicate built on blood, bullets, and backroom deals. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.